I lost my best friend and my family just because I got married.
The person you married sounds like they sucks.
This is going to be a 2-in-1 kind of story. One part is about my family and the other about my ex-best friend. Both stories interlock.
Ooh.
And it all revolves around my wedding. For context, my husband, 29 male, Thomas, and I, 29 female, decided to pay for our own wedding. Not only did we want to have a simple, low-cost wedding, but we also didn't want anyone feeling that they had a say over the event because they contributed financially. By the way, this comes from user The Unsocial Panda, and if you want to submit your own stories, go to the r/OK Storytime subreddit. So, we did as much as we could ourselves and DIY'd a bunch of things. We still continue to DIY a lot of things ourselves to this day, and it's something we both love. I met Thomas in high school at about age 15. I'd meet my ex-best friend, Stacey, when we were 5. I'd have a crush on Thomas as soon as he started going to my school, and we'd both secretly crushed on each other until our mutual friends got sick of it and made us confess. At the end of the year, he asked me to be his girlfriend, and we've been together since. Stacey didn't go through the same high school as Thomas and me, so I introduced them outside of school. At first, she would really like him, but as Thomas and I spent more time together, I barely heard from Stacey. I wasn't even invited to her 16th birthday party, which really hurt. I'd noticed this and would call her and ask if something was wrong, and she'd tell me everything was fine. I brushed past this because I thought that maybe she was hurt because I was spending time with Thomas and less than usual with her. Fast forward to when we were 19 and Thomas proposed. We'd talked about getting married since we'd gotten together. We've had the kind of relationship where everything just clicked. And so I was really excited that this was finally happening. And we would soon wake up next to each other every day. I messaged Stacey that night and asked her to be my maid of honor, and she said yes. That's when things started going downhill. My in-laws planned an engagement party for us. One day, Stacey and I were texting about nothing in particular before I started work, and I then asked if she'd like to be a photographer for the party, as she was interested in being a photographer someday. Suddenly, she went silent until I got a call from her sister who began yelling at me about how I was a selfish friend and wouldn't talk about anything but the wedding. This was maybe the second time in months that I'd mentioned it, and that Stacey was bawling her eyes out because I hadn't wished her a happy birthday. It was 8 a.m., and I would drive at least an hour and a half to work. I was shocked because, of course, I hadn't forgotten her birthday. In fact, I'd bought her a gift over a week ago, and I didn't understand why she didn't tell me herself that I'd upset her. I profusely apologized and felt horrible the whole workday. Next were the bridesmaid dresses. I'd originally thought Stacey and I would plan the wedding together. My husband was studying at university at the time, and I'd wanted to keep stress off of him. But Thomas and I just decided on things so easily that there wasn't much to discuss with Stacey. We were paying for the wedding ourselves and didn't have much money, so we kept things pretty cheap and asked the bridal party if they could pay for their outfits. Everyone was fine with that, and I reassured my bridesmaids that I wouldn't pick a dress they didn't want. No one was expected to fork out hundreds of dollars just for our wedding, so they had the power to veto anything they weren't comfortable with. Well, on the day we went dress shopping, it was Stacey, my other childhood best friend, sister, and mom. Stacey ended up spending almost the whole time talking about what she would do for her wedding. She was talking about what colors she'd want, the style of dresses, her wedding dress, and a wedding theme. Mind you, she didn't even have a partner.
Yeah, it says the single person.
Yeah. I let it go, as I just read it as her being excited for my wedding. But it really bothered everyone else. My mom, another bestie, even asked her to stop multiple times. Then comes my bachelorette party. I had left all planning of that up to Stacey. She wanted that, and I honestly didn't care what she did. I just wanted to have some fun with my girls and didn't care for any big expense. I would even have paid for myself. We ended up doing bowling, laser tag, laser skirmish,
Laser skirmish.
laser skirmish, pancake manor.
What? What is this? Where are you? I want to go.
and then going to some bars afterwards.
Normal.
The legal drinking age where I'm at is 18. So
Okay.
it was so much fun, except for the bars, as it was a Sunday night, so they were completely empty. I thought that part of the planning was weird, but we tried to make something of it. Turns out my mom had actually planned the bowling, laser skirmish, and pancake manor because Stacey hadn't planned a thing. My mom had been asking Stacey for weeks what was happening with the bachelorette party, and Stacey just kept saying she hadn't planned anything but was going to. So with the wedding day looming close, my mom ended up planning it herself. The bars were a last-minute plan from Stacey so she could claim something for the night. My mom told me this, I'd figured it out, as she just wanted me to have a fun night and was fine with Stacey getting all the credit. Next comes the big day itself. The weather was a bit dramatic, and we almost had to change our plans. We DIY'd so much of the wedding to keep costs low, including the invitations, the flower arrangements, and even strung up 200 meters of fairy lights at the venue ourselves. We'd arranged with the venue to go the day before the wedding to set everything up. However, it had been raining a lot, and it had flooded around our venue. Not only was there only one road accessible to the venue, but all the staff were flooded in and couldn't get there to let us in. Eventually, after about 3 hours, the manager was able to make it out to let Thomas and my brothers in to start setting up. I'd laughed it all off because Thomas and I didn't want to be stressing about the wedding. The important part for us was our life together afterwards, not the wedding. On the day of the wedding, the weather was cold. It was the first week of winter, and there were bits of rain here and there. Our ceremony was to be outside. It was so cold that my makeup, which I'd planned on using, was frozen.
Whoa.
And so I'd had to completely change what I'd planned on doing. Not only that, but the hairdresser I'd hired didn't do the hairstyle I'd wanted. She didn't even know how to put in clip-in hair extensions.
Wait,
So
didn't
she
you
had to-
like talk to her about that before?
Yeah, shouldn't that have been like arranged?
Like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about for my wedding day. Can you do this?
No, I can't. So she would have to redo my hair and rush it, which resulted in a hairstyle that looked nothing like what I wanted. And we didn't even end up using the hair extensions. While I was stressing about all of this, Stacey was just blabbing my ear off, and I don't even remember about what. And my other bestie saw this and ended up shutting her out of the room to give me a break. She was my hero on that day. Finally, I was ready, and we headed off to the venue. Thankfully, it wasn't raining, so we were able to have the ceremony where we had planned. It was, however, windy, and my dress had capped sleeves and a keyhole back, so I was absolutely freezing. That'll happen in the winter.
Yep. Sorry, that's outdoor winter wedding.
I didn't notice that in the middle of the ceremony, a branch had fallen off the tree above me and hit my face on its way down.
What, girl, why are we outdoor in the winter?
Everyone gasped.
Oh, no.
And my husband almost leapt toward me
Okay.
and asked if I was okay. I was fine, and it's now just a funny story we tell of that day.
So it was like a small branch.
Yeah, just like a stick.
I thought you just got like whacked.
A bird was playing a prank on you.
Yeah, it was like, "Proop," and everyone was like, ah! And you're like, it's guys, fine.
Now comes the worst part. They always say you don't remember much of your own wedding, so take moments where you stop and look around you to take in the event.
You get a concussion?
These are the moments you'll remember. So here is what I remember. I remember my first dance with Thomas's uncle laughing at the best man's speech, and a crowd of my guests surrounding Stacey as she had a sob session about how she's worried she'll never get married.
Is this really the time, girl? Go home and cry about it after the wedding. You can call, I don't know, call your mom up or whatever. Go cry in your room and get some ice cream and a hot chocolate, and you can watch freaking rom-coms in your PJs. That's what you do. You
She's
don't.
never done that.
I haven't.
I thought you had.
No,
Not once?
never with ice cream.
Got him on the technicality.
Ooh.
Boom! Never with ice cream.
Yeah.
She went on and on and on and on about how she doesn't have a boyfriend and that she needs a backup husband. Told the best man that he was her backup. and again told everyone all the details of her hypothetical wedding that she was worried she wouldn't have. To reiterate, she was 19 at the time,
Early.
which is the same age as OP in this story.
Yeah.
Not only that, but she refused to give a maid of honor speech and pulled her skirt up so high while dancing she flashed my stepdad her underwear, who was sitting about 1.5 meters behind her. She also decided that my wedding day was the time to tell me she no longer wanted me as her maid of honor, like we'd always planned, but that she wanted her sister to be her maid of honor instead. So yeah, that's what I remember about my wedding day. My supposed best friend making a day that was supposed to be about celebrating Thomas and I into being all about her and the wedding she wasn't even having. So how, you ask, does this have to do with my family? Well, let's go back in time a bit. Around the time Thomas and I got together, I started realizing how harmful my father, Richard, was. I won't go into too much detail, but here's just some for context. I was told by him many times that I wasn't worth his time, that I couldn't achieve much because I'm a girl, and that I'd never be good enough for him. He would compare me to one of my brothers, and even Stacey, and say I should be more like them, and even threw things at me in anger. My parents split when I was at the beginning of grade 12, and so I didn't do very well that year. Oh, and they'd split because he'd been having an affair with his boss's secretary, and Richard decided he wanted to be with her instead of my mom.
Dude, wow.
Richard!
God, you have drama in your family, man.
Yeah, this guy's really putting the rich in Richard, dude.
I agree.
He rented a house near our home, so me and my siblings, could stay with him every other weekend. But despite earning a 6-figure income, we were made to sleep on the floor and sit on camping chairs with a cardboard box for a table. I was also expected to make everyone dinner as he never planned food for us. Yo, daddy sucks.
No, dad is bad. Bad being a dad.
It didn't take long for me to get to the point of yelling at him about why he couldn't even provide the bare basics for his children to stay with him for a weekend, and why so much was left up to me. He called me ungrateful and many other names, so I called my mom to pick me up and I never went back. This began years of harmful and manipulative messages from him. Richard wasn't invited to my high school graduation and even tried manipulating me to see him by saying he wouldn't give me my 18th birthday money unless I saw him. Money has never been more important than it has to be for me, so I didn't care that he withheld it. When it came to my wedding, he was of course not invited, nor was one of his brothers who had been cheating on and manipulating his partner, who became one of my mom's best friends, and I still consider an aunt to this day. I cautiously ended up inviting Richard's parents to other brothers and sister. Big mistake. Huge. One day, my uncle Justin, who was invited, called me out of the blue to ask for a +1 to the wedding. Now, we didn't do +1s because not only were we paying for the wedding ourselves as two 19/20-year-olds,
which is impressive, and it makes sense that you're doing all that DIY.
With one of us being a uni student, but we also only wanted to celebrate our relationship with people we knew and cared about. He said he wanted to bring his new girlfriend to my wedding to celebrate because she was important to him and so was our wedding. That's weird. I would be like, no. He said he'd be happy to pay for her to go if money was an issue, but he understood if we decided not to invite her. I told him I'd talk to Thomas about it and get back to him. I was so uncomfortable by this request, as not only had I never met this woman, but he'd also just separated from his wife of many years that he also shared 2 children with, that I had invited to the wedding.
Yeah, I think I would go back and be like, hey, I talked to my hubby, and I think we just want to keep it to people we know really well.
No.
Sorry, thanks. No, not gonna happen.
I'm hitting you with a no so quick.
No.
It'd be like, especially after I explained once. Can I get a +1 for my new girlfriend? I'd be like, well, we're really only having people who are like super close to us and like know our relationship and know us. Yeah, but it's like she's really important to me and this is important. No. Next, moving on. Thomas agreed to not invite Justin's new girlfriend, so I messaged Justin saying we're sorry, but we just weren't comfortable with it and hoped he could still come. He was not happy.
And that's when you hit him with another no.
He called me one night to yell at me and tell me it was unacceptable to not invite his girlfriend because she was so important to him, and he'd even offered to pay for her, I told him it was my wedding and I got to invite who I wanted there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that if he
Put your
wasn't
foot down.
happy with that, he could just not come. Whoa. Oh my
Brilliant.
God.
Brilliant. Yeah, he can be as unhappy as he wants to be.
I told him it was my wedding and I got to invite who I wanted there, and that if he wasn't happy with that, he could just not come. He continued to berate me, even saying how rude it was that I didn't even call him to tell him this and just sent him a text, until I just hung up on him. The next morning, I received a message from my grandma, Richard's and Justin's mom. Richard is the dad, who told me how disrespectful it was to tell Justin that, and how dare I hang up on him. I ignored this message, but it didn't end there. I told my mom everything that was happening, and she decided to send an email to Justin, his parents, sister, and other brother, all members of that side of the family who were invited, reminding them to be civil and that the wedding was about celebrating Thomas and I. If they couldn't do that, then they shouldn't come. Well, the family came at her. They berated her on how she had raised such a disrespectful daughter who wouldn't even invite her own father to her wedding. See? There it is, folks.
And that was the real
And
story.
there it is. Why aren't we talking about Unc's girlfriend?
Yeah. Why is she not the disrespectful one?
Uh-huh. What's going on? Even the uncle that wasn't invited to the wedding emailed her asking why he wasn't included in the email.
Oh my goodness.
From then on, I received RSVPs of no from every single member of that family. Oh, and the way my grandparents RSVP'd no was by tearing up our handmade invitation and sending it back to us in the mail.
That's so petty.
That honestly made me laugh because I couldn't believe something so immature had come from someone in their 50s. Not
can.
only that, but Thomas and I had found out later that they had also sought out the pastor who was marrying us and contacted him to convince us to invite Richard, teach us respect, and tell us how sinful our actions were. He obviously did not and ignored them.
You get a bill. He's got to bill you for that.
Things got so crazy that we weren't sure if they would try to show up on the day, so we'd asked Thomas's sword fighting friends who were invited if they could be on the lookout.
What?
Pause. Thankfully, the family didn't even show up to this wedding, much to our sword fighting friends' disappointment and Sophia's. However, the drama didn't end there. This whole time, Richard was consistently emailing me, trying to make amends to our relationship so he could come to the wedding. He was, of course, never going to be invited, even if somehow we did make amends. And I told him this. He denied trying to even come to the wedding, but that was clearly a lie after the wedding happened. While I was on my honeymoon, he continued to email me and started sending me hurtful and manipulative emails again. I told him to stop contacting me, and even Thomas had sent him an email under his lawyer father's guidance and advice to stop contacting me, or we would be taking him to court. Richard then sent a threatening email to Thomas, and we decided to go get a DVO against him when we got home. Upon receiving the documents, Richard went into full-blown person freak out. He called and emailed my mom, berating her and telling her to make me cancel the DVO, which she refused, and told him that she supported me in making whatever decision I felt was best. He even got one of my brothers to try and tell me to drop it. This brother is one of the most thoughtful people I know and hates conflict, which Richard knew and used to manipulate him into doing this. This is where the two stories intersect. While all this drama was going on, I was trying to confide in Stacey about everything that was happening, thinking I would have her support. Instead, she would just start talking about her own dad who had cheated on her mom, but was still actively involved in her life as a loving father, or scroll on her phone while I was trying to talk to her. It was in that moment that I realized how little of a friend she truly was. She ended up not telling me about big things happening in her life, despite any efforts on my part to remain friends, and I only found out about them through her posts on Facebook. Not only that, but I was studying a beauty degree at the time, and so I'd do some beauty treatments on her. Even though she'd agreed to pay me for the products I'd used, she never did, and she'd brag about how between me and her mom, she could get all her beauty treatments for free?
Dang.
She continued to ghost me, and so I decided I was done. I ended up settling with Richard outside of court on a no-contact agreement for 2 years, all the same rules as a DVO without him having one against him, and I never messaged Stacey again. Oh, and to top off all this drama surrounding the wedding, A week before my wedding, my mother-in-law decided, without talking to myself or Thomas, to invite all of her Facebook friends to our wedding.
No. How many Facebook friends does she have?
4.
She's like, yeah, I'm inviting all my Facebook friends. They're like, Mom, you can't do that. And she's like, yeah.
Betty.
Beth. And Margaret.
But Margaret said she's a maybe.
And Margaret's out of town that weekend, so I don't think it's going to work out. And also Tina doesn't really like to go out.
Yeah, Tina's not really
she's
one to go out.
She's a huge flake.
Yeah, thankfully, no extra people ended up coming because who in their right mind thinks that showing up to a wedding when you're not officially invited is okay? So, here are some updates because I know you all love your updates. After Thomas and I had our first baby, Richard's mom was diagnosed with cancer and it was terminal. Oof. I had made my peace with never seeing any of them again because why would I want someone in my life who treats me the way they did? Of course, this meant they all felt entitled to see my child, and I was consistently contacted by Richard's father, particularly, but also by Richard a couple of times. This was after the 2-year no-contact agreement ended, about how badly she wanted to see my baby before she passed away. Thomas and I were, of course, not comfortable with this, so we didn't contact them back. We saw them at my brother's graduation after Richard's mom had passed, and his dad confronted me about how she had wanted to see my baby. I told him that we were not comfortable with that and kept our distance for the rest of the night. And I get it. Look, it's like, sure, you have a regret, right? You're at the end of your life. You're like, I want to see the baby. But you know what? Just because you want it doesn't mean you get it.
Yeah.
Because
you don't just get kind of whatever you want when you like. If you got whatever you want when you were passing away, then.
My stepdad and mom were watching them the whole time, making sure they didn't try to pull anything. Because of this, I am now no longer alive to them. So none of them have tried to contact me since, and that is the way I like it. The trash go ahead and took itself out.
Yep.
As for Stacey, years later after I'd had 2 kids, her sister sent me a friend request on Instagram, which I just dismissed. Then a couple of days later, while we were having a family night out, I ran into her and she confronted me. By the way, while my husband wasn't with me, I was waiting in line to get us some churros over how I'd apparently ignored Stacey and cut her out and treated her so poorly.
Oh my goodness. Stacey, were you not there for your whole life?
By the way, you wouldn't be treating your ears poorly if you listened to full episodes with stories like this on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search OK Storytime, and you've got 53 times 24 hours worth of stories. That's 1,272-ish. My math is right. Hours. I told her it was the other way around, and that Stacey had lied about what happened. Oh, we're confronting her. And she yelled at me about how that was incorrect, and her sister would never do that. I cut her off and said I wasn't going to argue and that she could believe what she wanted to believe, but that I was done talking to her. She spat, fine, and stormed off. As for Thomas and me, we are coming up on our 9-year wedding anniversary.
Wow, look at you. Pushed past all of that family drama.
Mm-hmm.
Made it.
And 3 kids later, we are really happy together.
And look at that.
Wow.
Look at that, Dakota.
Yeah, I guess, hey.
Happily married.
For 9 years.
Sleeping next to each other for 9 years.
Well, we don't know if they are.
Yeah.
They could have slept next to each other for 9 months and then gone,
and then
hey.
been like, hey, let's do different rooms.
Separate bedrooms.
Yeah. Which honestly is like, sometimes it's a good, it's a good thing.
Dude.
Some couples have separate bedrooms.
My parents did that because of the snoring. They literally could not sleep.
I think it's good. I mean, it's also just like sometimes it's nice to have your own space.
It is. Sometimes you just want to sleep in
yeah.
a bed by yourself. Sometimes.
And that's okay.
Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you do. Be able to choose. Anyway, I'm running a successful business that continues to grow, which is my dream since I was a little girl. My husband is doing amazing at his job, and we continue to hold those that mean a lot to us close. We hope to be able to have a party for our 10-year anniversary without drama to celebrate the life we've built together. Damn, that's the end of that story.